right, guys. Well, welcome to Sports Guyz, another episode. As we told you in our last episode, we were going to be having one that just focused completely on the championship game coming up in college football on Monday night. That's January 20th, and that's between Ohio State and Notre Dame. We've given you a little bit of preview of what we thought about this game, but we thought tonight we would go into a lot more detail and really dive into this game and break down things for you, get into the stats, get into the keys of the game, some of the headlines that are coming out before the game, and we'll get into all that. How you doing, Robbie?
I'm doing really well. Excited about this game, that's for sure.
I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I do think it's going to be a closer game than a lot of people think. That's my personal opinion. I think that, right now the spread's sitting at 8. I think it was at 10. A lot of people have been buying down Ohio State action. Most of the action's on Ohio State, thinking that they're going to blow Notre Dame out. And I think it's going to be under that. I think it'll be 6 or 7 points. I think Ohio State wins in the fourth quarter. They're the better team. But there's something about this Notre Dame team. They've got guts. They've got fire. They love this coach. They've got pride. And I think they're going to have a good game plan. I think they're really smart. And they're going to try to run the ball a lot and keep the ball out of Ohio State's hands. What are your thoughts on this game?
I go back and forth. I'm kind of oscillating. Everyone I talk to and all the podcasts I've been watching send me spiraling in a new direction. So it's kind of funny. There's so many different data points for this. I went back to the beginning and asked myself, how did we get here? And I went kind of back to the seasons that they had. I'm struggling with something because I feel like Notre Dame's competition wasn't very good this year. The competitors in their games, they weren't tested. But I think what happened was, as the season went on, they learned more about themselves, and they really kind of came together after that Northern Illinois loss, and it built a lot of character. So they're really hard to knock out. They're like they're like an MMA fighter that won't go down.
They're very scrappy.
They're scrappy. I just think there's a big talent disparity here.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think that Ohio State's been tested. They have played some good teams this year. Michigan State, Michigan, Oregon, on and on and on.
Penn State.
And Penn State, they've played all these teams, and they've come out with flying colors. I mean, the Michigan loss was an anomaly, I think. It wasn't their standalone loss or anything, but
that was game plan. That whole game was game plan.
It was the just straight rivalry. We hate you guys. We're going to fight you with everything we have.
That's part of it. But they decided to try to out-physical Michigan and to try to run the ball the whole game. And they took the ball out of their quarterback's hands and took it out of their big receivers' hands, which was stupid.
I agree.
They could torch Michigan with those receivers.
I think so, too. I think they learned a lot from that game. They learned a lot about themselves. They kind of had to rally together, and I think they're so dangerous of a team to play because they've got that chip on their shoulder, bad taste in their mouth still. Michigan lost that. It would almost take winning a natty just to erase that taste in their mouth. That's how bad that loss was, but for them. So I look at Notre Dame, who's come together as the season's gone on after that terrible loss, and I feel like they've established pretty good team chemistry and all that stuff. But I just don't think it's going to be enough to compete with what Ohio State is bringing on both sides of the ball. There are some chinks in the armor for Ohio State. I do think that it is possible to beat them. I'm not saying it's impossible at all. I feel really humbled by this. I don't feel very confident. I hear a lot of people calling for Ohio State confidently. I don't really feel that because they haven't played well as a team all year long, but they've been the best collection of talent in the country all year long. So if they have good team chemistry on that one day, on Monday, they will blow Notre Dame out of the water. But if they have struggles and they get played real tough like Texas and they're forced to run the ball, and I think there's a couple things going in Notre Dame's favor. One is they're really good with turnovers. I think the turnover battle might be in their favor. That's a tremendous advantage. And I think Notre Dame's defensive line is a little undersized, but they play tough. So we'll see what happens. I'm still working through what I think is going to absolutely happen, but I kind of feel like it's either going to be a blowout in Ohio State's favor or a really close game, and Notre Dame has a 50-50 shot if it's a close game.
My
That's kind of
evaluation,
my two
my
scenarios.
evaluation is that that Freeman's the better coach, X's and O's wise, and he's also the better adjuster at halftime. I really believe that, and I think Ryan Day's the better recruiter, and I think that so you've got a better recruiter versus a better coach. Which of those is going to win out on game day? It's likely because of the talent disparity, and I agree with you there that Ohio State ends up winning this game in the fourth quarter. That's what I think is going to happen. I just think Notre Dame's going to keep it close most of the game. I think they're really scrappy. I think their defense is underrated. They're really good. They're going to get a couple turnovers, and they're going to keep it close. And I think that it may even come down to a field goal. I mean, maybe that kind of game. But in the end, Ohio State's the better team. They should win this game. But I just have this feeling that Notre Dame feels like it's them against the world, and it's their locker room against the world. That nobody thinks they can do it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like that. I like the underdog play. You know, it's everyone can root for you. You leave it all out there. You don't hold back anything. You just fully commit to every diving tackle, and you got nothing to lose. And those teams are dangerous because they're
But,
playing above their talent level.
but you and I talked about this on our last podcast, and you said this, and I agree with you. The most important quarter in this game is the first quarter. If Ohio State goes up 14-0, it's over. Notre Dame can't play from behind. They've got to have a lead. Likely they're going to need to get up, something like 14-3 or something and try to hold on. That's the only way they're going to win.
It's weird because momentum is going to be such a big part of this game. And what I realize now, as I've watched football getting older and older in my years, momentum is something that you can't control, but it's like the ocean. You try to control it a little bit. And when it's going in your favor, the good coaches can really maximize it, get your team completely pumped up, the crowd into it, and the other team a little intimidated. And when something happens, like your team fumbles and the momentum starts to swing toward the other team, they're able to disrupt the other team taking full advantage of the momentum swing. So momentum's huge. And so what I'm watching is the first quarter. Can Notre Dame survive the onslaught of superstar track athletes that are their 5 skill position players, basically? They're 2 running backs and they're 3 wide receivers. And so if they survive quarter one, then they're on their way.
We agree.
Can they end the half with some kind of positive? Can they end with something that is in their favor? And then coming out at second half, can they make something positive, start the half with some momentum?
Yep.
So those are kind of some of the most important moments in the game. And if Ohio State gets an interception right at the end of half, if it's not a Hail Mary, but if it's like a real interception, and then they come out and score at the beginning of the second half, it could turn into a blowout. You know what I mean? Like the momentum is a cruel thing.
Well, there's one other thing. One other thing in this game is that Notre Dame's very limited in their passing game. They don't have much of a passing attack. And so they cannot play from behind. They've got to get a lead. They've got to run the ball a lot. They need time of possession. They need by far to win the time of possession battle. And if they get behind, they're in big trouble because when you get behind, you have to pass. And it's going to be real bad problems for them if they have to pass.
Yeah.
So their way to win this game is run the ball, play with a lead, play solid defense, get several turnovers.
Got to get turnovers.
And have Will Howard have like a subpar game, shut down Travion Henderson, shut down Judkins, and not let those receivers get the ball. It's a lot to ask. All the things they need to win this game, it's a lot to ask.
I think the most important thing is that they shut down the wide receivers because the running game for Ohio State is pretty good cumulatively, but neither running back has tremendous numbers, and they're actually, very good receivers out of the backfield. So really all 5 guys are going out in patterns frequently. And if your secondary can stand up to that, you have an opportunity to force them into being one-dimensional, which is just running the ball. You can bracket Smith like Texas did and force the other guys to have to be good. And then if you're getting pressure with your smaller but athletic defensive line and defensive front 7, then you got a shot. But
If you look,
the explosiveness for Ohio State is so scary, because what happens when there's an explosive play, like a little dump off to a running back who explodes through, like happened against Texas. That was a long play after the catch, and it was an explosive play, and so the momentum swing is just such a terrifying thing. They can break a touchdown very easily on any play. And
if you look at how they lost to Michigan, the blueprint and the game plan was totally faulty. They played right into Michigan's hands. Michigan, what are they best at on defense? Stuffing the run.
They have
Ohio State
NFL all over their defensive line.
And what did Ohio State try to do all day? They tried to out-physical them. They tried to smash them in the mouth, and they tried to run the ball all day. And they essentially shut their own passing game down.
Yep.
And it was so stupid. They kept the score low on purpose, which played right into Michigan's hands because they can't score. And what they should have done is completely opened up the playbook and gone pass the whole game. Michigan couldn't stop it.
Yeah, because oddly enough, Ohio State throws in order to open up the run. That's right. What they do.
And so what are they going to do in this game? I believe they've learned their lesson from that game, and they're not going to let that happen again. I think they're going to be trying to target Smith. They're going to be trying to target Tate, Ibuka. I mean, they've got all these guys, tight ends.
Yep.
And they're not going to let that
And their
happen.
running backs are great receivers out of the backfield.
They are going to run some because they want to set up the play action, but they're not going to make that mistake again. I don't see it.
I agree.
But Notre Dame has a pretty good secondary, so I don't know. We'll see.
No, not just pretty good. They're awesome. They're number 1 pass efficiency defense in FBS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so I mean that's a good secondary.
So
not only that, they have the most takeaways in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And the only game they didn't have a takeaway, they're ball hawks. The only game they didn't have a takeaway, Northern Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
The game they lost.
Crazy.
So if they get takeaways, they can win this game.
That's right.
If there's a 0 in the takeaway column, there's no way they won this game.
All right. So you said you're wavering about what's going to happen in this game. Are you going to be able to decide during this program?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take a look. All right. This is our episode 46, College Football Championship Game Preview, Ohio State versus Notre Dame. A couple epic photos of the key players you're going to see in this game. The guy there on the top left was a guy that nobody had ever heard of. Wide receiver, comes out of nowhere for Notre Dame. What was his name?
Greathouse.
Greathouse, yeah. And just comes out of nowhere, and now is all of a sudden a player that they're starting to have to game plan for.
I was doing some research on him. He certainly didn't come out of nowhere. He won 3 straight state titles in Texas. So. Mm-hmm. And he was offensive MVP. So the guy's a stud, but he's he's a sophomore and hasn't played much. So
he hadn't done much this year. Yeah,
he's NFL all over the place.
He had his coming out party against Penn State, essentially.
Yeah, he's been getting better and better. He's going to be an amazing receiver next year.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a young raw talent who is just really kind of coming into his own.
What a great name for a receiver. Greathouse.
Yeah.
So, and then you've got there Will Howard, who's had a really nice season. He has had a couple up and down games, but he's really come on strong in the last couple of games.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you got Smith, who's the most dynamic, electric freshman receiver we've seen maybe ever, but certainly in the last couple of years.
He's ready for the NFL right now. He just can't go.
Of course, you have Love, who's playing with a knee brace, and he had that unbelievably dynamic run, which you sent me a clip of today. I'm actually going to put that in the program a little later. One of the craziest runs I've ever seen. He gets tackled like 3 times, but finds a way to get into the end zone with his knee brace.
Pure heart.
Yeah. So these are some of the key players we're going to be seeing on Monday night. I'm really looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
So the game itself is in Mercedes-Benz Stadium Monday night, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. And this game is in Atlanta. The home team is actually Notre Dame Fighting Irish for this game, even though it's in Atlanta. You have these two epic coaches we've talked a little bit about on previous podcasts, Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman, both of whom are going for their first national championships. Ryan Day has been knocking on the door for a couple of years, has been in the college football playoff a couple of times already, and his knock on his record has been that he hasn't been able to win the big game, and that includes during the regular season. So I know very much in the back of his mind he's trying to cement his legacy here because he's had kind of a rocky start when it comes to all his big game performances. So any quick thoughts about that coaching matchup?
I think they're both excellent. I think Ryan Day's gotten a really bad rap because of the Michigan games. Some of it's deserved, but the offensive scheme was not good against Michigan this year, and they had to deal with totally loaded Harbaugh teams. So, the idea that you would fire him seems insane to me.
No.
You don't have to be happy about losing to Michigan. I get that.
I mean, they've lost 4 straight in that rivalry, and the question is, how many years will Buckeye boosters who support this program allow him to keep losing to Michigan? At some point, he's going to have to beat Michigan, right? They almost want that more than the Natty.
You want to see what your recruiting looks like when you win the Natty? I mean,
yeah.
Don't
you think one of these years they're just going to beat Michigan by like 3 touchdowns?
Yeah.
Just out of frustration.
Yeah. I'm hearing all this stuff about all the scandal coming out of Michigan with deleting emails, and the coaches are in big trouble. They're probably going to get whacked. So probably lose some scholarships and stuff like that. Yeah. I think, I don't want to be wrong about this, but I'm hearing a lot of bad stuff going toward Michigan, and I hope they get through it because I like Michigan, but or I have at least nothing against Michigan. But everyone keeps thinking if you're not going to beat them this year, when are you going to? Well, next year they're going to be loaded, and Michigan might be in some trouble. So it might be even easier next year, and they're certainly not going to play the same kind of
I have a feeling they're going to beat Michigan this year.
Smash mouth game plan. They're going to be high flying.
I agree with you. I think they're going to bring most of their players back. They're going to lose a couple of the NFL, of course, but I like them to beat Michigan this coming year. I agree with you.
I think they'll crush Michigan this coming year.
Mm-hmm. And then is there any coach in college football that has had a faster rise than Marcus Freeman, who's in his second year as Notre Dame Fighting Irish head coach and is now being rumored for NFL jobs?
What an impressive guy. He's taken a team that had that horrendous loss, and he just stayed true to it. He allowed that loss to hurt badly enough to bring them all together and rally the troops, and he was just the right guy to do it. He's a very classy, strong guy. He's grounded. He's got 6 kids. He's very rooted in tradition. He's perfect for Notre Dame.
And you talk to his kids, and they just love playing for him. I mean, it's one of those situations where the players really love this coach. So, you can't have a better situation if you're Notre Dame to have a guy who's that beloved in the locker room. So,
and he's brought back several traditions that were previous coaches had gotten rid of that were really, really popular with, church services and all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And both these coaches run very Christian programs. It's kind of interesting, good or bad. The Ohio State players have been very out front with kneeling and praying and lots of things like that.
Right.
They've been highlighting Notre Dame bringing back church services for their players and things like that. So it's just been interesting to see teams, how they're sort of made up and what they're made of, and all the elements that influence them. So it's been interesting.
This is a great matchup. As I said before, I think Freeman is the better X's and O's and halftime adjustment coach, and I think Ryan Day is the better recruiter. So and has a more deep team and more talent. So We'll have to see which one of those wins out on Monday. It's going to be really interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm. Good coaches, that's for sure.
So looking at the game odds, the game started at -10 right after the last weekend, and has been bought all the way down to -8. A lot of people are putting heavy money on Ohio State right now. The total points is 45.5, which means they think this game's going to be very low scoring, like a 23-20 type game. A couple of interesting signs there. Ohio against the world. And that's interesting because I really look at it more like Notre Dame has that feeling. Like the rest of the world thinks Ohio State's going to win. They're the only ones who believe in themselves.
Well, what's interesting is both teams have on their record a loss that they can't barely live with. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They didn't lose at Georgia. They lost to Northern Illinois and a really, really down Michigan team after their coach left. They're in scandal. They have no offense. The Ohio State fans are having trouble living with that loss. And so it's really interesting. Both teams use these as rallying points at different times in their season. And I really believe both teams are so much better because of those losses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Completely agree with that. So the big theme that's come into this game is Ohio State's dominant offense, which is the key advantage over Notre Dame in this championship. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that kind of overall public position? Yep. Yep. We'll see if that plays out. We're going to get into all the details and break down all the keys to the game and see what you guys think as we head up into the game. Looking at the key stats of the game, the most interesting one is the win probability for Ohio State's at 63, Notre Dame at 36. The projected points, 24 for Ohio State and 19 for Notre Dame. So that's kind of the spread that they're looking at right now. There are a lot of other interesting stats here I thought were interesting. The first one was the rush percentage. Ohio State has a 37% rush percentage, and Notre Dame has a 41%. So it shows Notre Dame is definitely more run heavy, which we kind of assumed that was true. Net points per drive was really interesting. Ohio State's at 2.11 net points per drive, and Notre Dame's at 1.75. So a lot of the calculations they do when they run these simulators is one of the reasons why Ohio State is favored. Field position was really interesting. Notre Dame actually has a higher average field position for the season. I don't know if that's because they have really good special teams. I'm going to be really watching for that to see why they always get good field position, it seems. Also, Notre Dame has a very much higher defensive success rate, which I thought was interesting, than Ohio State.
Yeah.
But any other of these stats really hit you?
No, they all tell kind of a story of lack of offense for Notre Dame. But if they are going to beat you, they're going to run the ball down your throat. And Ohio State, not as impressive running the ball, but definitely can throw all over the yard. So
the one in the middle of the page there tells a lot of the story. The third and fourth down success rate. You have Ohio State's at 45%, Notre Dame's at 30%. It's a pretty big drop off.
Yeah.
It may literally come down to that. If you can make your
it's hard to run the ball on third down, so when you're forced to throw and that's not what you're great at, that's not a good scenario to be in.
But if you have one team making substantially more third and fourth downs, they have a decided advantage.
No question. Keeps drives alive, keeps your possession alive. So yeah, that's a big advantage.
It is. So there's a lot of interesting stats here. I think Notre Dame's got a shot, but there's no question that if you look at their stats versus Ohio State's, they are at a disadvantage in most of the key ones. So looking at some of the headlines, the first one is a national championship on the line with Marcus Freeman and Ryan Day, both set to join the two-man club of active title-winning coaches. That was really interesting to me. There's only 2 active coaches that have a national title. So Marcus Freeman and Ryan Day, of course, are trying to join that very exclusive club of national title winners. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the coaches in this game are top notch. I really like both of them. I think they do it right. They've had this ugly loss, each team has, and they've used it the right way. You didn't hear any of their players getting in trouble and lashing out at the loss. They just kind of took it like men and let that hurt when they were going into the weight room. And, that's how you get better. You get angry and you get pumped up and motivated, and you're willing to listen a little harder when you take a beating like that,
Mm-hmm.
when you take a loss that hurts as much as those two did. So
Mm-hmm.
good coaches,
So,
great,
Robbie, can you
great
can you
motivators.
guess can you guess who the active title winning coaches are? There's only two left. All the others have retired or gone to the NFL. Can you guess who they are?
Kirby Smart
Yep.
and
He's in the ACC.
Dabo.
Dabo. Yep.
Yeah.
Kirby Smart and Dabo are the only two active title winning coaches. So kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
All right. Next headline is no one has played better than these Buckeyes during this college football playoff.
That's true.
And also, no one can figure out why it took them so long to hit their stride, why it took them the entire season to kind of look like the Buckeyes. So what's your thought on both of these? Why is it that they played so well during the playoff and yet we're just kind of, I mean, good, but you always felt like they were beatable the whole year?
I think their offensive scheme was – I think what happened was their offensive scheme was we need to run the ball to set up the pass. And they tried that all year, and their left tackle went down, who's a total stud. And they panicked, and they said, well, we're not going to be able to run without that guy, so we need to get better at running, so let's pound the ball. And they got kind of out of their character by trying to be a physical team.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where they were trying to be physical, and they're not. They're a finesse team that has athletic guys. And they can be a little physical, but they're not a physical team.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were trying to play with that personality, and it didn't match. And at some point, they started to say, let's just use our receivers, throw to our backs, get the ball out quickly, and let them get yards after the catch, and let's be the greatest show on turf. And they turned into that, and I think they just started walloping people. And they got away from that against Michigan, even though they played that way pretty well all year after they kind of developed that style. And then they went back to it, and when they went back to it, they went back to it with a vengeance. And they've been, beating on people ever since. Now, that Texas game came down to really one play near the end of the game. But I feel like they were going to do whatever they needed to do to beat Texas.
Mm-hmm.
They were the
That's right.
better team. So
Right. I also think, their quarterback's gotten a lot better during the season.
he's improved. Yep.
You're right. They did have some offensive line problems where those guys have come back now.
Yeah.
So they've got some guys back.
They moved their left guard to left tackle. He was out of position. Left tackle is the hardest position on the line to play. And even though he was an All-American left guard, he needed some time to get used to blocking in space instead of being a grinder in the guard position. You're just constant contact with not only your guy, but any guy who's trying to hit the gap, and you're just smashing into people on every play. Whereas tackle's real different. You do a lot of footwork. There's a lot of shifting backwards and trying to get to a spot before the other guy does, but then he shifts and he changes direction. And in order to not hold on every other play, your tackle's really got to be very agile.
The other thing is,
Will Howard, good handwork.
Will Howard grew a lot this year, and I think there were times in the year where he could get the ball to his NFL receivers, and there was other times where he couldn't get them the ball. And in those games, they were very beatable. But in the games where he gets it to them, they're almost unbeatable. I mean, they're just so explosive. So,
I think sometimes to our detriment, we don't let people improve. In our minds, they're as bad as they were on their worst game. And the truth is, people learn and improve, and it happens even through the season. A lot of gains are made in the off season, but some gains are made during the season. And I think Will Howard definitely improved throughout the season. I think a bunch of those quarterbacks did. Aller and all those guys. Yeah, Aller had a bad last game, but he had a good season where he showed a lot of improvement as it went on. So I think there are many quarterbacks who fall into that category this year. I wouldn't say Beck is one of them, but there are a lot of quarterbacks who showed improvement as the season went on,
For sure.
and they really kind of got better. I think Ewers even got a little better. I mean, to be honest,
Yeah.
there were some games there in the middle of the season. I was shaking my head like,
Well,
he's
he
not
had some
very good.
he had some injury problems too. He was never
Yeah.
healthy the whole season, pretty much.
I'm not
So
the biggest Ewers fan, but I think he showed a little bit of improvement. I mean,
yeah,
you're telling me he didn't play decently against Ohio State?
you did. You
Played
had a pretty good
decently.
game.
I mean,
He had an okay game.
and
I think
that
that
whole
was
defense is NFL. So,
that's right. That's right.
yeah. But
So
it
next
just
one is
that's an example of how sometimes we don't let people improve in our mind,
mhm,
where we're watching them improve and we're just kind of keeping them back to where they, Will Howard against Michigan or Riley Leonard against Northern Illinois. That's where we stick
right.
them as that's their talent level. And it's not. It's not
So
a
the
fair
next
assessment.
next headline is which Riley Leonard shows up, and the reason they asked this question is because he's had also some inconsistent games where he almost gave games away, including the Penn State game where he threw a really bad pick and he threw two more that should have been picked. And so he has some times where, he's not the best passer. Everybody knows that. He's really more of a
No,
running quarterback. And so the question is he going to be the guy who makes the big mistake or two that costs them the game, or is he going to be the guy who can protect the ball, run the running game, even contribute to the running game, maybe get a couple passes here and there, but protects the ball and doesn't have, lose the turnover battle?
I think the pressure on him is going to be so great that he's going to make mistakes.
You do.
They're going to try running it, but they're going to be in, 3rd and 6 a lot. You can't run in 3rd and 6, so they're going to be forcing it, and they're going to have to throw, and then Ohio State's going to pin their ears back and send Caleb Love, and I think it's just going to be too tall of an order.
So you're saying he's going to look like Sam Darnold in the last game?
Yeah, not quite, because
He's gonna fold under pressure. Yeah.
they're not going to let him wing it around and throw 4 picks, but I think that
Although he
you're
can
going to
run the
see
ball a
him
lot
under
better than Sam
pressure.
Darnold.
Yeah, he's their second leading rusher,
Right. Right.
Jeremiah Love and then him. So he has 800 and what is it? 866 yards rushing.
So you think the Riley Leonard that's going to show up is the one that turns it over several times and allows Ohio State to
Yeah,
win?
because they're going to have to throw.
Yeah.
They're going to have to throw if
Especially
they
if they're
get down.
behind. Yeah.
If they get down, and so I don't think that's a good recipe for winning.
I
The,
agree.
the the main way that Notre Dame wins this game is get some turnovers with their secondary
And don't turn it over yourself.
and get some points. I see everywhere they have to score touchdowns. Not really. I think they can just
The
get
reason they're saying
if
that
they
is
get
because
points if they get points almost every time down the field and they're getting turnovers, they can win this game.
if they don't convert field goals to touchdowns, they already don't score that much. They already have very low scoring compared to Ohio State. And so
I know,
the
but their
thought
only
is
chance
that
their only chance of winning anyway is if Ohio State doesn't have a high scoring game.
you're going to get only a couple trips into the red zone. And so what they're saying is if they're going to win this game, they need touchdowns. So
I don't agree with that. I feel like if they can hold Ohio State down, they can win
yeah.
this game. If
What
they can hold the
win nine
score on
total?
the other side low, then they can grind and get a field goal and grind and occasionally get a touchdown with Jeremiah Love. But
Mhm.
for the most part, they can't turn the ball over and they
Right.
have to get turnovers and they
Right.
have to keep the score low. There's not going to be any 56-54 shootout. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Either Ohio State opens up and scores a lot of points and blows them out of the building, or it's a really
Mm-hmm.
tight game right there at the end,
Right.
17 all in the fourth quarter,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And it's just going to come down to turnovers and
Mm-hmm.
third down conversions and things like that.
Yeah. So the next one is the Irish have also hit their stride, winning 13 straight games, knocking off 3 straight top 10 opponents, and notching their first 2 major bowl wins in 31 years, conjuring up memories of previous Notre Dame runs. So what's your thought about this incredible 13-game run that Notre Dame's been on.
Been
And
very impressive. I will say that the level of competition in the playoff for them has been higher, but the season itself, they
right.
played the academies, the low-end ACC schools.
But the
Not,
fact that they knocked off 3 straight top 10 opponents, that is pretty impressive.
yeah,
That doesn't happen often.
it's true.
Yeah.
They had a couple in there, but like Indiana was one of them, and I feel like
Georgia.
sorry, Indiana was not one of them. They were Ohio State. No, they beat Texas A&M was a big one. That was good.
In the first round of the playoff, they played Indiana
Yeah,
and
I'm
beat them.
sorry. Yeah.
And then they beat Georgia, and then they beat
Yes.
Penn State. And
I was
all
going
three were,
back to what their season looked like, and I was thinking their season didn't tell you much about this team. It
right.
allowed them to just slowly recover from that loss, that early loss, and then they've been playing really top level competition in this playoff.
Right.
So it's been interesting to watch them grow to rise to the occasion.
Right.
So do they have one more of those in them? Very possibly.
We'll see.
Let's see.
But it does kind of remind you of some of the big runs they used to have under Holtz, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. So next
But
one
I mean,
is
if you look at Ohio State, who they've beaten, Michigan State, not Michigan. They've Iowa. They lost to Oregon on that weird play at the end of they lost. It was bad time management. And then they've beaten Penn State,
Indiana, Oregon again.
Indiana. Yeah. So, and then Oregon again. So they've been tested,
Yeah.
and so this is not too big of a moment for them.
So next question is, who can stop Ohio State? So this has to do with how they've just really been on a run recently, at least, and that these games you just mentioned, they have not been able to been stopped. What's your thought about, can Notre Dame actually stop Ohio State in this game?
No.
No.
The only team that can stop Ohio State is Ohio State.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. 100%. If they have a bad game plan. They're kind of like
Bad
the
game
Ravens.
plan, running every down,
They
getting
remind
into
me
third
of
long, and
they remind me
letting
of the
Notre Dame
Ravens.
get turnovers.
They literally remind me of the Ravens. They're the Ravens of the college
Yeah.
football. They can only beat themselves.
Kind of, except the Ravens need to run the ball all the time. And I think Ohio State needs to throw the ball almost all the time.
Agreed.
So even to your running backs, dump it off to your running back and let them go. But lots and lots of running where you have stacked in lines, it's not conducive to success for Ohio State. They haven't done great.
So one of the big matchups is Ohio State's receivers versus Notre Dame's secondary, and how that whole matchup comes out.
Yep.
What is your thought there? Or is Notre Dame going to be able to hold up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Ohio State is used to running wild on teams, but this team right here has NFL DBs. So, they're number one in pass efficiency in FBS. Texas was 2, and Texas was good. And Texas was able to handle them. Jeremiah Smith had 1 catch for 3 yards.
Right. I know.
I mean, now there were other weapons that they used, but they have the ability.
That's the problem with Ohio State. You can shut down 1 or 2, but they have so many. That's the problem.
That's true. That's true. Egbuka is going to have a big game,
and
etc.
Tate had a big game because he was open.
So they had the most takeaways in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame did. And they had 38 sacks, 19 interceptions, and 13 fumbles. So they're wrecking chaos on your drives with all these turnovers. And they turned a lot of those into points. Even if you're getting it and then getting a field goal, you're still stopping the other team from going down and scoring. So you're adding 3 and you're taking away from them. You're adding 3 and you're taking away from them. The turnover battle is going to be huge.
It is.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think Ohio State's the only team that can beat Ohio State.
And I think Notre Dame is maybe the only secondary in the country that maybe has a chance to shut these guys down. Yeah.
They have a good shot at making problems for them.
And if they watch the Texas tape, Texas was pretty good at it. So
yeah, they bracketed Jeremiah Smith, and then the other guys were all on all in single coverage, but a lot of times I do know that Texas played a lot of zone and Notre Dame plays man-to-man. So
Right.
there's going to be a lot more opportunities for a missed assignment with Notre
Yep.
Dame.
There's no doubt.
So it's a riskier proposition, but it's risk reward. Notre Dame might get more. They might have more success.
They were having a big debate about that on ESPN.com last night, and they were saying that Texas actually would do better against Ohio State from a passing perspective because of the zone versus the man-to-man.
Possibly.
They don't think anybody can cover Ohio State man-to-man because of the 3 NFL receivers.
Yeah, except the guys covering them are NFL DBs.
I guess we're going to find out if they can cover 3 of them too. It's not just 1; it's 3.
And what kind of pressure are we getting on Will Howard? That's a big question.
That's true.
Because the smaller, faster Notre Dame defensive line might have the conditioning advantage on those big linemen.
So next one is, can Notre Dame stop the run?
Yes. That is one thing that I think is in their favor.
Okay, so they can stop the 2-headed monster of Ohio State.
I think so.
Okay, I think so too.
The problem is those running backs go out in patterns, and there's no linebacker that can stay with these running backs.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
they're going to get eaten alive.
One thing Notre Dame will do, they will definitely limit how much Ohio State runs the ball. I agree with that.
Yep.
And so we'll see. I think Ohio State's going to be forced to pass, and we'll see if Will Howard has a big game or not.
Well, Ohio State wants to pass.
I know that.
I think they're going to be forced to run. I think they're going to leave 4 men in the box, 5 men in the box, and make Notre Dame.
Right. That's what they should do.
Make Ohio State make them run.
That's what they should do. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're only hoping to be able to stop that run. So
next one is, Notre Dame's offense has leaned on the running game. However, it could be an opportunity for trick plays in hopes of catching Ohio State leaning towards stopping the run.
True.
So the question is Notre Dame going to put in a couple of trick plays in this game? Sometimes if you're the underdog team, you need turnovers and you need trick plays.
Yep.
So you think they will?
Yeah, you need a freebie. You need some kind of –
there'll be a fake punt or two.
End around to Greathouse, who's going to throw it back to the quarterback,
Flea flicker or something.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to do several trick plays and also try to steal a possession or two. That's how it feels to me. So next one, both teams apparently want to do this. Both teams feel this is their strategy. Stop the run and make their average QB beat you. Do you think that applies?
I don't think Notre Dame wants that at all. I think Notre Dame wants to stop the pass and then hope their run defense holds up.
Whereas Ohio State wants to stop the run and make their average QB have to beat you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You put a spy on Riley Leonard and you run blitz on every down.
And you don't let Love get out, basically.
Yeah. I mean, Jaden Greathouse has 464 yards receiving this year and only 2 touchdowns.
Right.
Your NFL corner can handle that.
And what's the rub on Riley Leonard? He's not a passer. I mean, that's the rub on him. So
he's not great. I mean, he has a nice mix of running yardage. He has 16 touchdowns rushing. So
right. So what you want to do is
a goal line threat.
You want to force the other guy's quarterback into what he's weakest at, right? So that's what they're going to do, is try to force Riley Leonard to pass.
Absolutely.
And on Ohio State, they're probably going to drop into coverage. I know they don't do zone, but they're going to drop into coverage and try to force them to run. So I agree with you there. So next one is, if Notre Dame wins the run game, then Notre Dame wins the game. So if they have more yards rushing in this game, they win the game. Do you think that's necessarily
not
true?
Necessarily. Not necessarily. I think you could chunk down the field, but get stopped a lot, but you got a lot of yardage. But the offense for Ohio State might be getting these huge explosive plays that swing momentum without the ball very much. I think Ohio State can still win.
I think you could reverse this. If Notre Dame doesn't win the run game, they might get blown out.
Yes.
If they
Yeah.
do win the run game, they still might lose narrowly. But I think if
Correct.
they win the run game, they will keep it close. I think that's what it
Right.
should. Yeah.
I think if it's a
And
close game, Notre Dame could do it.
and if they win the game, it'll probably be because they really crushed in the run game, like by double or something like that.
And they won the turnover battle.
Yeah, that's right. So looking at the keys to the game, first, how does Notre Dame move the football? Irish have only averaged 25 points per game for the whole season, but they've not been explosive. Ohio State's run defense ranks third in CFB. Against fourth-ranked Penn State last time out, Irish had 2.8 yards per carry, which is not good. Against Georgia, Irish had 4.2, but a Riley Leonard scramble for 32 yards skewed that number. No other ball carrier had a tote longer than 8 yards for the Irish. So how is Notre Dame going to move the ball against this Ohio State defense? I mean, that's really the key here.
I don't know. I'm really worried about it. I mean, Jeremiah Love has a knee injury that he's just trying to exist with. Their left tackle, Notre Dame's left tackle, Antoine Knapp, is out with a high ankle sprain. That's a disaster. So I can't envision how Notre Dame's offense really moves the ball.
And if that's true, then is this even going to be close?
I think there's a good chance it's not close.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think Ohio State plays with intensity and emotion, and then they let up, and they kind of let teams hang around.
And the
So,
Irish do have a good defense. They really do.
oh yeah,
Their defense is the whole key to this game, in my opinion. It's
yeah,
because they need a low scoring game to win.
low scoring and takeaways,
Yeah,
and then they got a
that's right.
shot.
So second is, how does Ohio State free up Jeremiah Smith? Do they even need to? The Buckeyes beat the Longhorns largely without Smith, who had one catch for 3 yards. Notre Dame leads the nation in drop back EPA per play. Irish are also top 5 run defense. So do they need Smith to have a breakout game, or do they not really need him? They just have so many weapons. Is he more of a decoy?
I don't think they really need to. No, I think they need to go to the open man, and I think they have a lot of weapons. So you just go to whichever guy's open and let him do the damage. And if you want to have a long night of Egbuka, you're gonna just stay bracketing on Smith and let Egbuka run up and down the field on you. But I don't think it has to be any one person, and that's not Ohio State.
Don't you think Jeremiah Smith is going to not want to have the same kind of game this time? I just have a feeling he's going to have some breakout plays in this game. I just don't believe that he won't. He's too good a player.
I don't know. I think they're absolutely willing to take him out of the game and see what happens. And I think he's a good team guy. I don't think he cares that much personally. If I'm not in the equation, but my guys are going off, that's fine.
I tell you, I just have a feeling he's going to have a good game. Now, also mentioned here is the miserable game plan that led to the loss to Michigan. So obviously we think that they've learned from that. So
yeah, I haven't seen anything like it since.
So third, what does Ohio State's game plan entail? They seem to employ too much of the Michigan script in their last game against Texas. Lots of screens, horizontal throws coupled with runs up the middle. And they got bailed out with a Trevion Henderson home run right before half. So the real feeling for most analysts who know football feel like Ohio State didn't really play that great against Texas, at least their offense didn't.
I don't think they did.
And so are they going to open up the game plan here? I mean, there's no tomorrow, so why not open up the playbook here?
I think you take your shots, try and get momentum going, ride off that a little bit, get a little intimidation factor. And, the defense is pretty intimidating that Ohio State has too against a mediocre offense for Notre Dame. So that's kind of a scary matchup.
It is. Completely agree. Well, we'll see on all these things. These are the things people are really thinking about when it comes to this game. So let's talk about our keys to the game, the Sports Guyz. The first one is Notre Dame run the ball and control the clock, long drives, keep the ball out of the hands of Ohio State's offense. So you would agree with that one, correct?
Yes.
Notre Dame pressure on Howard. You mentioned that if they don't get pressure on him, they're going to get carved up.
Yeah.
Correct. Next one is stop the run.
Not as important.
Not as important, but you need to do it. You don't
Yeah.
want Henderson going off. Don't settle for threes.
I don't really care about that. They want to get points every time down, even if it's threes.
Yeah, but if you get all threes and you end up with 9 points, you're not going to win the game, right? So you've got to convert in the red zone.
The key to not wanting threes is when you know you're in a shootout. And your whole goal here is for your defense to keep it from becoming a shootout. If it becomes a shootout, I think you're not going to win. So
yeah, that's right.
So threes are fine as long as the other team or Ohio State doesn't keep doing long bombs and getting touchdowns on you.
Mm-hmm.
If that's happening, you're losing.
I do understand this one, though. I think don't settle for threes. You're going to have a.
I don't agree, because don't settle for threes. You know what that means? Go for it on 4th down on the 20-yard line.
No, I don't want them to do that either.
Against probably the best team in the country in the red zone.
Right.
Defense. So, no, I take the 3 and keep going. Let's see what's next.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree.
Maybe you get a pick 6 or something. You never know. Might get a touchdown a weird way.
Threes means go for it at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing that. I think that's
Next
a mistake.
one is win the turnover battle.
Absolutely right.
When you're the underdog, you have to win the turnover battle. You just
100%.
Yeah.
You probably need 2 more than the other team. So, like, if Ohio State gets 1, you need 3.
That's
if
right.
they get 2, you need 4.
So all of these are the keys for Notre Dame. There's no question. And the other one is trick plays. They just got to do everything they can to steal possessions. It's the only way they're going to have a chance.
They fundamentally sound. I think if they play field position and settle for threes and do everything they can to keep from the big plays, they'll hang around.
Right.
That's all you want, is hang around. So anything can happen.
So Ohio State's keys to the game: run the ball to set up play action. It's really hard to have play action if you don't run the ball at all.
Not really. They don't worry about play action. They just need their receivers to have time. The question is, can their offensive line hold up?
Right. I mean, they need to do enough running to be able to set up the pass, but the pass is going to be their primary weapon. There's no question. So next one is get the ball to NFL receivers.
Yes.
They've got 3 of them, and when they don't get it to them, they end up with a Michigan-like result, which they don't.
And they throw their backs, little screens and stuff they can take to the house.
That's right. Yeah. So they've got to figure out how to get to this talented receiving core that they've got. They got to get the ball to them.
And it's not just the receivers, the backs. Imagine the nightmare if you're a linebacker. You got to try and stay with Henderson or something.
So next one is win the time of possession. This is something Notre Dame obviously wants to do as well by running the ball and controlling the clock. If Ohio State wins,
more important for Notre Dame to win the time of possession than it is Ohio State, because Ohio State can score quickly.
Yeah, but Ohio State knows if they win the time of possession, this is going to be a pretty easily controlled game.
Yeah. But it's not like a major stat, in my opinion. In my opinion, Notre Dame is going to win the time of possession because they're going to be running the ball a lot more. And it's not going to tell you necessarily who won the game.
Mm-hmm. Again, if Ohio State wins the time possession, the game's over. Notre Dame has to win the game of the time possession to have a chance.
But they very well might and still lose the game.
So next one is force field goals to keep their score down, because Ohio State, on average, scores more points than Notre Dame. So bend but don't break scenario in the red zone.
If it's low scoring, field goals are pretty valuable.
Yeah.
I will say, I think the kickers were more impressive than I thought. I thought Notre Dame's kicker was so bad all year, but honestly, what's that?
He was.
Mitch Jeter was 13 of 20. That's not great at all. but he was 53 of 53 on extra points.
That's true.
Pretty good.
Mhm.
And
And he was clutch. He was clutch.
and he was clutch when they needed him. He
That's right.
hit it. Jaden Fielding was 11 of 15, so it's a little better ratio, but not a lot better.
Mhm.
And he was 69 of 69 on extra points. So
Mhm.
both guys are perfect on extra points.
If this becomes a field goal battle, then Notre Dame's in good shape. If this becomes Notre Dame scoring threes and Ohio State scoring touchdowns, it's going to be a blowout. So we shall
Well,
see.
yeah. I'm okay with Notre Dame kicking field goals and just keeping it tight.
So next one is Ohio State is to ball hawk like Notre Dame does, and if they can win the turnover battle,
Oh, yeah.
then game over because it steals some possessions.
Yeah, if you get extra possessions, it could be a big blowout.
Any other ones you can think of here for Notre Dame or Ohio State? Keys to the game?
Turnover battle is the big one. I think third down is huge. I think whoever wins third downs a lot of times ends up with their team on the field longer, their defense fresh. So red
True.
zone, can Notre Dame get into the red zone and score on this team? If they can, they got a shot. They got a good shot. But if they run into that, what do you do when you get down to the 4-yard line? You try and run it in if you're Notre Dame? Because Ohio State's got a good record against goal line stands, against teams that get inside their 5.
That's true. All right, Robbie, final thoughts, and then we're going to do our picks. We're going to pick who we think are going to win, and you're going to give me your score, and I'm going to do the same. So this is our last chance to go on record.
So I think this is their 9th meeting, which is interesting. Irish have the number 1 pass efficiency defense, which I talked about, and I think that's going to be very tested, and we'll see. Notre Dame has the 14th best running team in the country, and at 210 yards per game rushing, and they're 102nd in throwing. So what you're looking at here is Notre Dame is like a military academy. They're basically Army or Navy. They're sort of like Navy. They can throw it a little bit and they run it a lot. They run it and they run their quarterback a lot. So it's a lot like a military academy on offense. And Ohio State has given up the fewest passing yards per game in the country, 161 passing yards. So that's a strength for Ohio State. So if Notre Dame falls behind, they're in huge trouble.
True.
So Notre Dame has the most takeaways in the country. Something to keep in mind: Notre Dame's left tackle is out, and Jeremiah Love being hurt. That might be a problem. So, but I've heard a lot of analysis in this, and a lot of it's conflicting. But I think at the end of the day, it's gonna be an exciting game.
I do too.
I hope that it's pretty close. I wouldn't mind seeing some momentum swings.
I hope there is. I hope it's a close game and exciting.
Ohio State gets out to a quick 14-0 lead, and then Notre Dame does some cool stuff, whether it's trick plays or just really effective running plays, and comes back and ties it up. And then I'd like to see that kind of a battle. That'd be pretty cool.
All right, well, let's go on record. Who do you think is going to win, and what do you think the score is going to be? We'll see how close we are.
Not exactly sure about score, but I think Ohio State wins by more than 2 touchdowns.
Really? Wow.
I don't think it's that close.
Okay. I like Ohio State to win 27-20.
I'll say
I think it's going to be close into the fourth quarter, and then I think Ohio State kind of takes over.
I'll say 38-14.
Wow.
Yep.
That big, huh?
Yep.
Okay. I don't like the 14 just because me personally think that Notre Dame's going to get forced into kicking some field goals. And I think it'll be one of those odd numbers.
Yeah,
We'll
they
see.
might. They might.
I'm hoping it's a much more exciting game than Rob's projecting there, especially for all you fans. And I think it will
Well, it
be. I
might
think,
be an exciting game, where it opens up at the end.
yeah, I
Like
think
I
it'll be.
think it could go back and forth a little bit for a while, especially the first half. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 10-10 at halftime, but I just think over time the better team should win, but it doesn't always. And it's I'm very humbled right now because I think that it could be completely wrong what I'm saying. Like I understand that these games have a life of their own and the momentum does what it wants. And so a weird play on special teams could trigger Notre Dame getting the momentum and just like physically pounding on Ohio State because Ohio State's not a real physical team. The physicality could win out, and then they keep it close and they have long drives where they're pounding on Ohio State. I mean, it's possible. And then the whole idea of Ohio State having this track meet with all five of their specialists running wild doesn't never happens
Yeah, because
because
you know what tape Notre Dame's going to watch. They're going to watch the Michigan tape. They're going to try to muddy the game
of
up. They're
course,
going to try to bruise it up,
yeah,
and
they need to play as
keep
hard
it
as
low
they can,
scoring.
trying to not get penalized, but be slapping their arms of their receivers and pushing and hanging on to their jerseys. They need to play ugly to throw Ohio State out of any kind of rhythm they might get into. And at
I
that,
think that Ohio State will be winning by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. I think Notre Dame will get a trash touchdown with about 2 minutes left, and it will be 27-20. That's what I think. They'll get
maybe
kind of a trash touchdown to cover.
I won't be shocked if Notre Dame wins this.
Really?
There's a way they can win it. There's certain formulas where they come out on top. But it's like when we used to play pay dirt and you would flip that little thing
It's
back and forth
unlikely. It's
and you
unlikely.
had to put the offensive play on top of the defensive play. And if you call it a good defensive play against the offense, it gave the offense very little chances of slipping a tackle and running for a touchdown. Um, the size of the thing that you could hit was smaller, and you would flip the little thing, but you were so lucky all the time you would actually hit it. That can happen. Notre Dame could hit the play that breaks it open for them, even though they're getting dominated, you know? So,
Possible.
but they have the
Possible.
chance of physically dominating Ohio State. That is a possibility.
Very true. Well, guys, we hope you really enjoy this game. We're looking forward to it. We're excited about it. We'll talk about it with you guys next week, the result of it, and hopefully it lives up to its billing. Two best teams in college football. And thank you guys so much for joining tonight. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We've got some great stuff coming your way. Next week, we're going to be talking about some basketball, which will be great. And otherwise, have a great time this weekend. Got NFL playoffs as well. So lots of good stuff coming up, Robbie.
Thank you for joining us and enjoy this game. Hopefully, it does live up. It's culminating in an amazing championship of our first inaugural 12-team tournament, and it's been a very exciting run this season. It's a cool way to end it, and this is a first time through. So let's enjoy it, and hopefully they'll do some tweaks to it and make it even better next year.
And guys, drop us a comment down below. Tell us who you think is going to win and what you think the score is going to be. Do you think it's going to be close? Do you think it's going to be a blowout? And give us your score, and we'll read some of those in the mailbag next week. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Sports Guys. Take care.